Honourable Clayton Cosgrove.
Mr Chairman, I just firstly want to say that the Labor Party will support the bill. We have our own SOP in my name to deal with many of the issues, an alternative measure to deal with many of the issues that the Minister has raised. But I want to firstly, before I get down to the grit, express some goodwill and some bipartisan support. The government, we support these measures. We note the mains eel collapse and many others, and that this issue has been around for a long time. It is a difficult issue, the retention issue. It places certain burdens and certain responsibilities, some of which are hard to deal with. So I do commend the Minister for coming to the party late, but coming to the party anyway. The history of this, and I note the Minister's comments about having concern for subcontractors. I note that when the previous Minister was in the chair, about just after the time of the mains eel collapse and controversy, it was Maurice Williamson, the then Minister, who wiped his hands of the whole thing. In fact, he told this Parliament under questioning from this side that there was no issue, that he'd consulted the industry and there was no issue and everybody was happy with the status quo. There was no need to make any changes. That was communicated through the Select Committee because, you know, the industry was happy. Even though a company collapsed under the stewardship and as part of by one former Prime Minister, Jenny Shipley, who, when coming before a number of select committees, I say as an aside, was loath to make any explanation or take any accountability for the fact that a massive construction company collapsed, millions and millions of dollars were lost and subcontractors were hung out to dry. And I have to say to the Minister in the chair, to be fair to him, he was not Minister. I think he may have been sacked from Cabinet at that point. He wasn't Minister at the time. It was Maurice Williamson. But the government collectively wiped their hands of the whole issue. And we were told in the Select Committee, and it was only very, very late in the piece, when officials came to us and said, there's been a bit of a rethink. And the jitters around the industry where the government was coming up to an election and they thought they might want to do something, and that coincided with David Shearer and the Labor Party announcing that we would consult the industry and come up with a proposition that we have today. And so this SOP's been dropped on us in 24 hours, and I look forward in goodwill to actually going through the detail in good faith and having a look at it. But I do say to the Minister, it is good. He's world-renowned for road to Damascus experiences. You know, he's come to the battle almost when the war is won, late to the battlefield. And it would be good for him to express a little bit of humility, and he could just have a look at the dates on the relevant SOPs. One was dated a year ago to propose, even though it was argued that this bill was out of scope to deal with retentions. Now it's back in scope. Oh, what a surprise. And this SOP appears almost a year after the Labor Party proposed, and the Minister is right, proposed a similar model to the New South Wales model. And given the Minister's outlined his, I'll outline mine. And that proposal, and one of the deficiencies I think in the Minister's model, but I'm grateful if he will allay my fears, is that to have monies deemed trust monies is all very well. But if you have crooks in a company that spend the money, however it's deemed, and it's gone, even though it's higher in the hierarchy in an insolvency, you can't get blood out of a stone through you, Sir Minister. If it's gone, it's gone. And that's the thing that worries this side of the House. We proposed a simple, and we costed it out with the industry, a few $100 basically, effectively, but we proposed a similar model to the New South Wales model, which was to have, if you like, a contract trust, a construction trust, that would not interfere. It'd be like a drop box. It would not interfere. It would sit between the developer and the lead contractor and the subbies. It wouldn't interfere with timing. It would not engage in dispute resolution. That's up to the contractual arrangements between the parties. And it would not be onerous, and it would not require multiple sort of, trusts and all this sort of thing. You could default to the public trust if you wanted to. But what would happen is the monies, instead of flowing directly from developer to lead contractor and then to the subbies, and if the lead contractor, the mains eel goes boom, it's all over, there's nothing there, those monies would flow in whatever contractual time frame was deemed by the parties, not the trust, and that may vary project to project, through from developer to trust, and then is paid out as per the contract, subbies first, then the lead. The difference in our proposal, unless I'm to be corrected, and I wait to see, is that if you had a main seal collapse and if you had crooks in a company, then that company collapses and the money is frozen, quarantined off in that trust, and the subcontractors know, Mr Chair, the subcontractors know.
The Honourable Clayton Cosgrove on part one.
Thank you. Yeah, well, I'm just following the Minister's lead. You didn't pull him up when he explained his SOP with respect, sir. Yeah. And I think it's very helpful to us.
Order. Mr Cosgrove, the Minister's SOP is to part one of the bill as well as to part two. Your SOP is to part two of the bill, and I'm sure you'll want to talk to it then. Mr Cosgrove.
Thank you, sir. But I think, as I say, referring to being helpful, that the Minister's explanation deserves some sort of counterpunch. So, in respect of part one, but I think in fairness, the concern we have with the Minister's proposal and where we differ is that once those monies are gone, they're gone. It flows through a trust, main seal goes bang, at least the monies are quarantined within a construction trust and can be paid out. And one of the benefits of that, I think, and perhaps the Minister's SOP may deal with that as well, is it actually provides for those people who are supplying subcontractors, for instance, more confidence to extend credit and other facilities right through the supply chain. So, sir, we support and we will look forward to a number of explanations because these are quite technical amendments. We support the adjudication provisions and the notion of trying to straighten out these particular problems within an industry, because at the end of the day, subcontractors lose, and when they lose big time. Larger organisations have the ability to manage their financial affairs in a way that the one-person subcontractor, brickie, scaffolding person, whoever, does not, and they are vulnerable. They are extremely vulnerable. And I am pleased that the Minister, but I'd like an explanation as to why it took him a couple of years to change his mind, that the Minister has come to propose some solutions in terms of the retention issue, because the original proposition was there was no problem, according to his predecessor Maurice Williamson, that nothing was required to be done, according to the reports that officials were getting and passing on to the Select Committee, that the government didn't need to do a thing. And I just say I'd be interested in the Minister's comments and his analysis, sir, of the main seal collapse. Because in this Parliament we've heard nothing. In fact, Mrs Shipley, I think, is still the chair of a major power SOE. Yet the murk that surrounded that collapse, of which I believe she was director or deputy chair, but she was definitely on the board, the murk that surrounded that collapse and the commercial and social carnage that occurred as a direct result of it, through hundreds of subcontractors losing millions of dollars, many going out of business, no one has provided an answer. In fact, it was well reported in the media that the Prime Minister stood shoulder to shoulder with Mrs Shipley, and we've never had an explanation either from the Prime Minister in respect of that statement or Mrs Shipley, who now heads up and has been appointed to many. In fact, the chair, well, I think she's on the Flag Committee, is she or not? Mrs Shipley? No, I'm not sure. But she's been appointed to many a government entity, and no one has provided an explanation as to whether she is fit and proper to be on those entities given the main seal collapse. So I welcome the legislation. We will have questions, detailed questions for the Minister, but our main concern, and that's why we did put up an alternative proposal over a year ago, was that nothing was proposed by the government. And I'd like an explanation to tell us what will be the case if monies are deemed to be in trust, but thieves and vagabonds and rogues exist within the company, and that money goes and is spent or misappropriated and is lost, whether it will matter at any point, whether it's higher on the hierarchy when the receiver comes over the fence to try and save it, because there may well be nothing there. And that's, I think, in goodwill where our proposals differ. And I would hope, and the Labor Party remains open-minded, and will listen to the explanations of the Minister, and we remain open-minded as to whether we will accept and support those particular proposals or support our own. because I think at least on both sides of the House we want to deal with this issue. We want to ensure that small businesses are protected. They live up to their responsibilities. They do their work. All they ask is that they are paid for that work, and all their suppliers ask is that they are paid for that work. But you have a main zeal collapse and everybody in the commercial chain, like a set of dominoes, falls over, from retailers right through. So we all want to see that actually resolved. What we seek on this House is reassurance that this is the best possible option. It's very easy to say the setting up of a construction trust is going to cost a whole lot of money. Well, the information we had, is that that would be very minimal, because we too were mindful that we did not want to simply impose compliance cost on the industry. So I look forward to the Minister's reply.